Hey guys, so it's been a little bit since I recorded a video. I got married over the weekend, so that's why I haven't put out any videos in a little bit. I wanted to jump on today and talk about the spoilers that we got from Gothic so far. So I have the ones that they talked about, the evil mechanic, and then I have the ones that they talked about, the graveyard mechanic. So I'm going to be talking about these cards in the lens of limited gameplay. I'm not going to be talking about constructed today. So as a limited player, of course, the cards that I'm most interested in are the ordinary cards. At least those are the most important to the format. We have these 3 cards, so they're all 3 mana for 3 power, and they have no abilities, but they kind of have an ability, which is that they are evil. So evil is the new mechanic that they're introducing into Gothic, and it affects all cards in all sets, not just in Gothic. But any minion that has the minion type monster, demon, or undead will now be considered an evil minion. So there's going to be cards that reference evil, they banish evil. Hopefully there will be cards that pump evil minions or reanimate evil minions or grant some other kind of ability like airborne or burrowing or something to all evil minions. Those are the kinds of things that I'm really hoping to see in this set. So I know people were kind of underwhelmed when they saw just like 3 mana, 3 power minions, but this actually made me really excited for Gothic. So the thing that we've had in beta and Arthurian Legends is kind of a lack of synergy. Like you're kind of just pairing 2 good cards together and maybe they make each other slightly better, but most of the time it's just each card is kind of just individually standing on its own legs and has to perform well in a vacuum. The thing that I'm really wanting to see is a bunch of really good build-arounds. So cards that are horrible outside of the specific deck because you have 15 evil minions, then you can play this build-around card and it becomes like an A in your deck. But regardless of whether there is a really good evil build-around that you want to pair with these cards or not, you're going to play these cards all the time. So these are the same as like an Ogre Goons in beta, which is like maybe in the top like 5 ordinaries in the set for beta. So you're just going to play a 3 mana, 3 power minion every time. You're probably never ever going to cut one of these cards. It might not be like the absolute highest pick, but if you're in hopefully the evil deck that comes about in this set, then you're going to pick these pretty high and be very happy with them. So you're going to pick these as if they're like a B or B minus most likely, and they'll get pushed up to maybe like a B plus if you're in the evil deck. And sadly, we haven't seen any other evil minions except for this one, oddly. So this is the other evil minion that they spoiled. So it's 7 mana for 6 power, double water threshold. It's elite. It's evil. It has Void Walk. It must be cast to a corner void, costing 2 less for each unit in an adjacent square. So that's the square that it's in and the 2 squares touching the corner. So there's a lot going on with this card. At the most basic level, it has the same stat line as the Fomorian. So we had the Water Fomorian. It was a giant. It was 7 mana, double water threshold for 6 power, and it had Burrowing and Submerge. And the Burrowing and Submerge didn't really end up mattering all that much. It just meant that it couldn't be drowned or buried. But obviously this isn't going to cost 7 mana every time. First of all, it must be cast to a corner void. So there has to be a corner void for you to cast it into, otherwise you just literally can't play this card. But in limited, that's hardly ever going to happen. Yeah, having all the corners filled with sites is just not going to happen very often. People aren't going to be like playing around this card because it's an elite, unless somehow your opponent just happens to know that you have this card in your deck. Basically 99% of the time, you'll be able to cast it into a corner void, which is going to be your opponent's corner voids, ideally. The big question is, like, are you ever going to get a discount on this guy? Like, it does count your units and their units. It does count their avatar or your avatar, but most of the time, avatars in limited, unless we get one with like a weird movement mechanic, most of the time the avatars are going to be at their starting point or like 1 step in front is like the most common place for the avatars to be, so you can't really count on that. If you really need to get this down, you could take a step to the right and then play it into your own void to get a 2 mana discount, or you could do that plus play a minion in the same spot and have a 4 mana discount. And that's really not that hard to do, and that already brings this guy down to a 3 mana 6 power minion. That is pretty crazy. Of course, he's like way back in your own corner void, so you have to like move him all the way up, but even then it's like normally you don't have a 6 power minion until turn like 8 or 9, and you can do that play on turn 4. Yeah, first 3 turns you play 3 sites. On your second turn you play a 2 mana minion, and then turn 4 you move over. That minion is in the in the adjacent square, and then you cast this guy for 3 mana. So a turn 4 6 power minion with Voidwalk that has to be played in your back row. I'm already pretty interested in that. And sometimes your opponent's just going to have like 1 or 2 minions adjacent to the void, or you're going to be attacking them and you're just going to move your minion into an adjacent square and be able to get this guy down for cheap. I think it's pretty unlikely that you're going to have to spend 7 mana for this, but even if you do, it's not the end of the world. I haven't been like crazy about 7 mana cards in Limited, but they're much, much better than 8 mana cards. And this isn't really a 7 mana card, it's more like a 5 mana card. So yeah, this one looks fantastic. I'd probably take it at like an A-, B+ range. I should also mention that in sets like these, there's going to be things that care about having evil, and it's going to pump your evil minions or make them cheaper or give them special abilities and so forth. But then there's also a bunch of hate cards. So the fact that this is evil might actually be a downside, because there's going to be like 3 mana banish all evil minions at target site or something, and you're going to just get blown out by that card. Whereas these guys, most often, it's going to be an upside, because if that spell that I just made up exists, then it's going to be 3 mana, kill a 3 mana thing, and that won't be that big of a deal. But the fact that it's evil means that your synergies and stuff are going to make this card so much better than it currently is. Like right now, it's like an average card, and it'll get bumped up to a great card, whereas the Monstrosity is already a great card, and the fact that it's evil might bump it up just a tiny bit, but it might actually make it worse overall, because there's going to be all these banish evil hate cards. So I'm really sad to say that Willing Tribute is the only evil payoff that we have for Gothic right now. And it's not even evil itself. So it's 2 mana, 1 air threshold, 2 power, it's ordinary, and it's immortal. And you can sacrifice it to untap an adjacent evil ally. So generally, sacking something that you have on board to get a little bit of tempo isn't going to be great. You can just play this as like a 2 mana, like a really, really crappy blink. But the upside of this card is that you can just play it as a 2-drop and just get in for 2, and that'll just be fine. That's just like an average 2-drop. But then in some corner case where it actually makes sense to activate this thing and untap an evil ally, you're going to be able to like blow someone out, or like this thing's going to die or something because they played a 3 power minion right on top of it and you just can't defend it or something like that. And you can just cash this in for a little bit of value, or like a big blowout, hopefully. Hopefully there's some like really good tap ability or something on an evil minion. But this card's not going to be a high pick. I think it's going to be like a C, bordering on like C- is my guess, which is really sad to me, because this is the only evil payoff that we have. And I really, really want some good evil build-arounds in this set. And another thing I didn't really love seeing is that along with 1 evil payoff, which I don't even think is very good, we got 2 evil hate cards. So, you know, they're making me a little bit nervous. But we have Consecrated Ground. It's an earth site. It's exceptional. And it says evil has no power here, meaning it doesn't deal any damage. It has 0 attack power. It has 0 defense power. Those are both considered power. If you're coming from Magic, it's not power toughness, it's attack power, defense power. So it means both. I think this card's pretty bad. I think it's going to be a pretty low pick in Limited. Maybe it'll be useful as like a frontline site or something. I guess one interesting thing with this is if they play a minion into the void, like a Monstrosity, then you can play this site into that void and it'll have 0 power, and then you can like swing something in. So if you have like a foot soldier next to the corner void, and then they use that foot soldier to get a big discount on their Monstrosity, and then you play this on top of it and then just attack it with the foot soldier, then that's a huge blowout. But that's like an extremely rare corner case, but maybe it'll come up more often than just that one card. Like I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of Voidwalk minions. That's something that people have been speculating about for a long time. So we'll see. For now, I would guess that this card is like a D+, C- type kind of pick. It's not going to be that much better than a Valley, I think, most of the time. And if you have a bunch of evil stuff in your deck, like this is going to affect those units too. You just can't really play them there. So then if they have like Immortal and they're attacking your site, if they're attacking your Consecrated Ground, and you have just a bunch of like evil minions around it that they just can't really block, their minion. So this card isn't even all upside, but we have gotten some hints that Earth is the non-evil element. So of the 4 evil minions that they spoiled, none of them are Earth. I am guessing that evil is not going to be very much of a thing in Earth, but of course half your deck is going to be another element, so be aware of your evil minion count. But sometimes you are going to play this as your second sight forward, and they're just going to have an evil minion right in front of it, and they have to go all the way around it, which can be pretty backbreaking sometimes. So this is the kind of card that's a lot better on the draw than it is on the play. And it's possible Earth has like actually 0 evil minions, and you're gonna not have that much evil in your deck, and most of your opponents are just gonna have like 10 evil minions or something, and maybe this will be a great card, but we won't know until the set is out. All right, and then this is the other evil hate card. It's a unique magic. It's triple fire threshold, 7 mana, and you place a cross anywhere in the realm, and you banish evil and damage units occupying affected sites. If there's an evil minion on any of these squares in the grid, then they're just automatically banished, but honestly, dealing 7 and then dealing 3 around it is going to be able to kill most stuff anyway. This is kind of like a weird board wipe. I mean, if I'm heavy fire, I'm probably playing this card every time because there's the opportunity for a huge blowout. Like by the time you get to 7 mana, if the board's getting all gummed up, then this is just gonna like crack it wide open. Because of the damage grid, you can really move your things away from the damage grid pretty easily and then place it on the board. So again, this card's probably like a B+, A-, maybe like a B+. I mean, it's pretty expensive, but it is a pretty huge blowout. There's not going to be many cards like this that can get like a 3 or 4-1 or better. And banishing stuff is going to matter because there's a bunch of cemetery mechanics. This also can just deal 7 to their avatar if they've taken a step at some point. Also to note, I'm sure you can put the cross any direction that you want. Like you can have the cross on its side or straight up and down or upside down kind of thing. So you do have a lot of flexibility there, but you can't deal 7 on the edges or in the corners. I'm pretty sure is how this works. This card actually can't deal any amount of damage into the corners, but there's not usually like a ton of action going on in the corners anyway. So, all right. And then we've got some cemetery mechanics. So this is a 3 mana, 3 power mortal. It's ordinary and it has double earth threshold. So like I said, this is the first minion that they spoiled for earth, and it is not evil. And this guy has +1 power for each search party in your cemetery. So this is going to be kind of bonkers in limited, I think. From what I've heard through the grapevine, Gothic is supposed to be kind of a bigger set, like beta sized. So I guess realistically, you're probably going to get like 2 of these on average. But even the first one is just fine. It's just a 3 mana, 3 power minion. And like I said earlier, those are just great. Like this one does have double threshold, which is a little worse, but the upside of the second one being a 3 mana, 4 power minion is pretty sweet. And every once in a while, you're going to get 3 or 4 of these things, and it's going to be pretty insane when you draw multiple of them. So I would rate this higher than the 3 evil minions that we saw. I would say that this card's like a solid B. And who knows, maybe we'll get some like self-mill mechanics. I know that there's some graveyard hate stuff coming up, so maybe those will balance each other out. Maybe you're just going to be able to mill yourself for a bunch of cards and get a bunch of these in your yard without even having to cast them ever. That'd be a pretty big deal. And if you can like reanimate these too, that'd be pretty cool. Like this would be kind of like a decent thing to reanimate if you have multiples and you're able to mill yourself. But that's kind of a dream. I don't know if we're gonna get that far. I'm taming my optimism a little bit and saying I really want to have sweet build-arounds, but I don't know. They seem like they're pretty timid in like some of the mechanics that they're putting out. For instance, if we do have a bunch of mill, then Archimago is gonna get even worse because that card's just gonna go absolutely nuts. So unfortunately, because of cards like Archimago and Constructed, I'm guessing there's probably going to be very minimal mill, if any, but I'm pretty optimistic there will at least be some discard outlets in this set. Okay, Second Wind is the next one. It's 1 mana, 1 air threshold. It's an ordinary magic, and it says, an allied minion takes a step, and you may cast the spell from your cemetery, banishing it afterward. So if you played Magic, this is literally just flashback. So that's really exciting to see that they're playing with flashback now. So you would never ever play this card if it didn't have flashback. 1 mana, spend a card to have a minion take 1 step. that's absolutely horrible. That's like the worst sorcery card ever printed. But 2 mana, take 2 steps. You know, that's still pretty bad. Like we have Tactical Move, which is 2 mana, all of your minions take 2 steps, and that card's no good in limited. So from that perspective, I would say that this card's like an F. Like, you should probably just never ever play this in limited. The one caveat I have is that if they do print a bunch of self-mill, and you can just put this into your cemetery for absolutely no cost, then maybe you play a Second Wind, because you do just get a little bit of value when you mill this. You just get a free half of a card. It's kind of like a quarter of a card, but at least that's some amount of value that you can get. But even then, like, it's just a disaster anytime that you draw this card. So unless there's also discard outlets that you're just happy to be discarding cards all the time, then I just think Second Wind is just such a horrible card. So I'll give this card like an F, but I'll give it like a build around D-. Okay, this is kind of an exciting one. So it's 3 mana double air threshold Carrionette. It's an exceptional magic, and it says summon an undead minion from a cemetery to a nearby location. So interestingly, unlike Raised Dead was reanimate in a random minion, and that's all it said. This one says it has to be summoned to a nearby location. So Raised Dead, you could just summon it anywhere on the board. This one, you have to actually summon it nearby the spellcaster. So my one big bone that I need to pick with this card is that it says undead and it doesn't say evil. So that really sucks. I mean, from the original 3 ordinaries that we saw, the air one is undead. So the assumption is most of the air minions are going to be undead. But again, like, your deck's going to be 2 elements, so it just kind of sucks that this is going to mostly just hit air minions, and I really wish that it just said evil. Maybe there's some evil card that isn't undead that they really don't want you to reanimate in Constructed, but honestly, like, one of the best reanimation targets is Infernal Legion anyway, which is already undead, so that's a really weird situation. I don't know why they did that. I really wish that this just said evil, but I'm just going to have to trust that this is still going to be playable. But again, it kind of feels like this card probably said evil at some point and then they changed it to undead. And the reason probably is because of Constructed. And it kind of sucks that some of these cards are getting changed because of Constructed, and it might totally nerf it to where it's not really playable anymore in limited. So this is one of those really low floor, really high ceiling kind of cards. If there's discard outlets and there's really big, awesome things to reanimate that are undead, and you can actually put those things together, then this card can be amazing. If it's just in an average deck that doesn't really build around it, then it's going to be pretty bad. You're probably just going to be reanimating like a 3 mana undead minion, like the 3 mana 3 power undead ordinary that we saw. And that's just not going to be exciting. Obviously, that's just way worse than just having that card in your deck instead of this. But this does make me excited because this is a build around card, and that's exactly what I was asking for. I just really need them to have enablers and payoffs to make it so that this card is actually amazing. The hope is that it's not just amazing in every deck, and that means you do actually have to build around it. You need to have discard outlets, or you need to have self-mill, and then you need to have the big undead things for you to reanimate. So I'm hopeful. I wish that this just said evil. It might be too good for Constructed if it said evil instead of undead, but I bet in limited, if this just said evil, it would be obviously much better, but I don't think it would be like absolutely busted. So I'm going to give this card like a build around B, assuming that they give you the tools that you need to make this card work. And then they did give us this awesome undead elite minion, which can be reanimated with Carrionette, so that's exciting. They are showing that you can reanimate something cool. So this is 7 mana, double air threshold, and it has Genesis, banish up to 3 minions from one cemetery to stitch together. This Abomination has their combined power, but each part may be damaged and destroyed separately. My assumption is the way that this works is that if you play this and you banish a 2 power, a 3 power, and a 4 power minion, then this will have 9 power. And then if you get into combat, when damage is assigned, your opponent's going to be able to assign damage to whichever part of this that they want to. So if they're dealing 5 damage, they can deal 3 damage to the 3 power part and 2 power to the 2 power part and kill both of those. And then this will be left at 4 power. So that's pretty cool. So that means it isn't as good as just a 9 power minion in that case, because it will eventually get weakened. And it's not like those parts can like block for the other parts or anything. I'm pretty sure it's just the way that damage is assigned is how this card is affected by that ability. So in an average game of limited, there's going to be some stuff in some cemeteries. They all need to be in the same cemetery, and it does say up to 3. So even if there's 2 minions in one cemetery, you can still play this thing and banish both of them. And sometimes that's just going to be worth it. That's better than just waiting for this thing to have a third part. Like many of the elites and uniques that are playable in limited, this is just going to be like an automatic pick if you're in air. It is pretty expensive, so maybe it's not going to be like a really early pick necessarily, but bombs like these, if it's in a pack, you're probably just going to take it, like pack 1, pick 1. It isn't like busted with Carrionette, which is kind of sad. Like if you turn 2 discard this and then turn 3 reanimate it, it's just going to have 0 power. So obviously that's not really what we're trying to do in limited anyway. It's more like you're just going to play this for 7 mana, and then at some point you're going to be able to reanimate it. And that also isn't great either, because like the parts don't go back to the cemetery when they die. They're just going to continue to be banished. When you reanimate this, you still need to have 3 minions in one cemetery, or some amount of minions in a cemetery for you to make this thing big again, which is going to be pretty hard to do. Banishing like 6 minions from cemeteries in one game is just not going to happen very often. And there is cemetery hate in this format, so that's going to make it even harder to do. But yeah, I like this card. I'm going to take it early, and it's going to be a bomb. When it's in play, this is just going to be like a really interesting card to figure out what you should be doing with it. And, you know, your opponent can like attack a little thing into it to kill a little part of it or something. Or if they have a 3 power lethal minion, they probably can just attack into this and kill all 3 parts. I guess I'm not sure if a 1 power lethal minion would kill this thing straight up, or if it would only be able to kill 1 part of it. It says each part may be damaged and destroyed separately, so maybe that means it's a May ability and you can just choose to deal the damage to it as a single unit. Not really sure about that one. So then also like Poison Nova, like this is only 1 unit getting hit, so do you assign the 1 lethal damage to just one of the 3 parts? And then that takes Poison Nova down a little bit. Anyway, for limited, this is just gonna be a great card. This is probably like a B+. And here we have our first Cemetery Hate card. This is 1 mana, 1 Earth Threshold for Carrion Beetles. It has 1 power. It's an ordinary beast, which beast is not an evil type. It has Burrowing, and it has Genesis, banish 3 cards from 1 cemetery. So most of the effects that we've seen on cemeteries look at both cemeteries, so that's kind of interesting to note. You might not actually want to banish things from your opponent's cemetery, so you do kind of have to know your deck and know, am I using both cemeteries? Am I only using my cemetery? If you are playing Earth, Earth is like the non-evil element, so you're probably more likely to want to banish things from cemeteries if you're playing Earth. Of course, Search Party is an ordinary that you want to be in your cemetery, but obviously you're just going to banish your opponent's cemetery most of the time. But if you're afraid of a card like the Abomination, then you might want to banish cards from your own cemetery too, if it doesn't hurt you to do so. But that's just looking at that one ability. The rest of the card is just horrible, so it's a 1 mana, 1 power Burrowing minion, and those see absolutely no play in limited whatsoever. So this is kind of like a sideboard card, and sideboards don't exist, especially in limited. So I think you're probably just never playing this card. But if the format develops in a way where there's just tons of self-mill and people are just using their cemetery a ton, then if you're getting 1 card of value out of that Genesis ability most of the time, then maybe you play this card. But 1 power minions just don't do enough in limited. I just don't really see this card making an impact. And even in constructed, like, are you really playing this card if you're not playing with sideboards? Probably not. So I think this was a good try at Cemetery Hate, and it's showing that they are thinking about that kind of thing, but realistically, this just isn't worth a card most of the time. But we'll see. Maybe the Cemetery is like extremely important, and having just 1 of these cards in your deck is going to be actually pretty useful. I think even then it's not going to be like a really high pick. This is going to be an ordinary that you get really late. So I think it's like a D. But if the format develops in a very specific way, maybe I could see this being like a C. Okay, and then we have Plague Pits. It's a fire site, and it's elite. It has Genesis if there are 3 or more dead minions, banish all cemeteries. So it looks at both cemeteries to see if there's 3 minions in them, and then it banishes everything if that threshold is met. Once again, you need to know whether or not your deck is using your cemetery or not, because if it is, then you might just not want to play this card. You do always have the option to not play this, or like play it early. So maybe you still play it anyway, but it could feel pretty bad if you really don't want to banish your cemetery and this is like the 5th site that you draw and you really need to play that site. So once again, you kind of have to look at your deck. So I kind of doubt that I'm going to be taking this card very highly either. In limited, I think this is going to be like a D plus or something. Maybe this is like a C, because again, you can play it when it's good and you can maybe just hold it in your hand when it's bad. And maybe you like use your cemetery and then you play it and then it doesn't feel that bad. You do have some agency over when this happens. 2 mana, 1 water threshold, return to nature, ordinary magic, return up to 3 cards from a cemetery to the bottom of their decks, draw a spell. I guess it says decks because you can discard sites, but all the 3 cards have to come from the same cemetery. So it's a 2 mana cycler, and the really exciting thing about this card, so at first, you're probably looking at this and saying, okay, this is like some cemetery hate, which it is. But the other thing that it does is it makes it so that you can never get decked, which you're probably thinking, okay, that never ever happens really in limited, but we've never had a cemetery focus set before, which means this gives me some hope that we are going to get some self-mill and you're going to be able to mill the crap out of yourself, and then you might be decking yourself. And if you have 2 of these cards, you can use one to put the other onto the bottom of your spell book and then draw a spell, so you'll just never get decked. And if that ever does happen, this does not say you put them on the bottom in a random order. You get to assign the order, so then you even know what you're drawing next. So you can just put a return to nature on the very bottom, and then the next 2 spells are the next 2 spells that you want to draw if you're like about to get decked. I really hope that this is what you're doing with this card, and it's not just put 3 cards from your opponent's cemetery on the bottom of their deck. That might actually be fine, but it's way more exciting if this is like anti-decking yourself. Like, that would just be sick. Like, let me just mill myself like crazy and then play these to not mill myself out. So this card is like an A+ as far as my excitement goes for this set. I would still say that this is like an above playable card because it messes with your opponent's cemetery and it draws a spell, but the real nuts is going to be when you build around this and you mill yourself out and you can do the thing. So I would give this like a C- trending towards C in an average deck, but in the turbo mill deck this is more like a C+, but that might be a little bit optimistic, but I'm really hoping that self-mill is a thing. And also, just to point out, if we do get self-mill, if you come from Magic, you're used to having a 40 card deck. In Sorcery, we have a 24 card deck. So a card that says mill 3 in Magic is equivalent to a card that says like mill 2 in Sorcery. So if we do get a mill 3, that's like a lot of cards that you're milling. So I'm going to make a prediction that we're going to get either a 2 mana water monster at ordinary that has Deathrite, mill 2 cards, or there will be like a 4 mana 3 power thing that has a similar ability. I would love it if it was like a Genesis and Deathrite ability or something like that, but something that can mill like 2 to 4 cards but is otherwise just a playable minion, I think would be really awesome. I really don't want to see just like 2 mana ordinary mill 4 cards and don't do anything else. Like, that would just really suck. And the other thing I really don't want to see is like there's one avatar that really cares about evil stuff, and then there's not really that many other build-arounds for evil, and it's gonna be like super hard to pull this avatar for limited, and then evil just isn't gonna really be a mechanic. But I have to believe that there's gonna be like a bunch of cool build-arounds for evil cards, so we'll see. But overall, my excitement is peaked. Like, this could be a really cool build-around card, or it could just be like a random cemetery hate card, and Carrionette basically has to be a build around card. Like, you could just have undead in your deck and play Carrionette, but I'm really hoping that they put this here as a signal that air is going to be a bunch of undead minions and you're going to be able to discard cards, or you're going to be able to mill cards into your cemetery and then reanimate them. So really excited to see Carrionette. I really hope it's good. All right, and then quickly I want to talk a little bit about the draft formats that are going to emerge from this set. So right now, the most popular draft format that people are drafting is 1 pack of beta, 2 packs of Arthurian Legends. And I think the natural extension of that is, okay, now we have 3 sets. Let's do 1 pack of beta, 1 pack of Arthurian Legends, 1 pack of Gothic. And I'm really urging people not to do that. Obviously, we haven't seen the whole set yet, but considering that the set is built around evil minions and it's built around hopefully some like self-mill, discard, reanimate, like mess with cemeteries, like care about things that are in cemeteries, like those are very specific mechanics that cards in beta and Arthurian Legends just don't really do anything with. To use evil minions as the example, if we look at the ordinaries and exceptionals in beta and Arthurian Legends, this is the breakdown that we have. There's only 14 evil minions in beta. There's 0 evil minions in Arthurian Legends at ordinary and exceptional. And in beta, there's 109 minions that are ordinary or exceptional. So this 14 is only 13% of all minions. And it doesn't really change that much when you look at all the rarities. Arthurian Legends still has 0 evil minions in the entire set. And then beta has 24 minions when you include the elites and the uniques. So that's still only 14% of all of the minions in beta. So I know this is gonna like throw a little bit of cold water on people who are really wanting to do 1 pack of each set that's out, because that just like makes sense to do. The thing is, if Gothic is what I think it is, and it is going to have all these really cool build-arounds and stuff, those build-arounds just aren't going to do anything anymore, because you're only going to have 1 pack of Gothic cards. I really think that we need to draft Gothic, just 3 packs of Gothic, and don't include anything from beta or Arthurian Legends. Let those be their own formats, but we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm guessing they made evil a mechanic for a reason, and hopefully it is supported in limited play. For those reasons, I think we should draft 3 packs of Gothic, and that's going to be a great format, I hope. All right, thanks for joining for this early review of the limited cards for Gothic. Let me know what you think about the cards that I rated and which ones I'm right about and which ones I'm horribly wrong about, or if I taught you anything that you didn't think about for these cards. I'm really excited to start drafting Gothic when it comes out. I think supposedly it's coming out in October. I'm expecting the draft group to grow when Gothic comes out and a bunch of people come back to Sorcery, because I'm guessing a lot of people kind of put Sorcery to the side because there's so much time in between sets. But we are drafting every week on Wednesday evening, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That's the Sorcerers at the Core Discord. You can find links to that in the description. And we would love to have some new players in the group, so I hope you'll join us there. Hopefully we get some more spoilers in about a week or 2, and I'll make another video on those. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Bye.